extremely relevant question to be addressed in today's day and age. For one thing, the pandemic brought about a lot of changes in work styles and work culture. What I mean by work styles is that during that time, people learned that either they enjoyed the office space and felt claustrophobic at home due to the anxiety, insecurity, and the need for connection, or the converse, where they realized they felt a lot more productive, having enough time for themselves, understanding what worked for them, and eventually both styles of working that evolved to a place where they met their needs, felt heard in the office space, were able to do and function at a level that was optimal before it changed again to bring people back to the workforce. So, if you say what are the needs that arose, a lot of attention during the pandemic was given to mental and emotional health, productivity with the form of empathy and collaborative listening and working styles, and more importantly, a concept of working smart rather than just working hard, right? And with this sort of collaboration, a lot of personal accountability, a lot of trust and responsibility, along with autonomy, was placed on the employee. And these are the changing needs that are now arising in the workforce. While may have been present in the past, is now more relevant because that's what people want to take moving forward because they've had access to it and they know it's entirely possible. So the challenge then lies not as much with the employee as it does with the employer and the policies to work together to sort of create an environment that is mutually supportive, as much for the employer as for the employee. An extremely relevant question, as I think a lot of people feel confused by coming back to work. I've had a lot of clients who've told me that they feel micromanaged after their employers and their bosses trusted them so much in a remote setting. It's almost like there are time trackers and other things that they need to show up with and for. And the important part of it is realizing that at some point people let go of these structures during the pandemic to trust the employee. And to now say, how do we go back to a manner of trusting? Because people are now at war with what worked versus what is. And my point is, both models exist, right? It doesn't have to be so stark on two different ends of the spectrum, but a working together as to what could possibly exist right now. It does mean recreating it. It does mean redefining something that hasn't worked in a conventional sense that we can adopt, but more, how do we adapt to what currently exists? So showing up in a way where even employers learn to validate employees, trust them to do and know what to do, and for employees to realize that they have the power and feel empowered enough to ask their questions, to show up and say, let's together collaborate on what my goals are in this time period and show up in a way that makes sense for both of us. There will be a place where the manager can hold the reportee accountable and for the reportee to ask the manager for what they need and start holding space for a work smart culture where people realize that they are capable and they may have interests outside that may need to be met, which happened during the pandemic, and asking them what they need to feel more supported in the workplace. And I think a large amount of stress needs to be focused on the employee assisted programs rather than programs that just worked in a certain culture. To start saying, what can we do now where managers are more empathetic to the team? Employees are empowered to state their needs without fear and find that balance where collaborative listening becomes the focus as to what the needs are and how do we hold space for the people who want something different from what exists, right? And I think moving forward, policy would have to be changed based on the culture that is evolving, and there is no fixed method, but a more creative process that will possibly be a highly likely evolving process across time rather than a method that can just be used conventionally. A lot of our companies do have people in different places, a lot of employers who've not met employees, managers who've not met reportees. And one of the things with that is it's very hard to enforce, come into the office, we will do a team building activity because it isn't as easy as that anymore. But more to say, how can we connect even if it's online? One of the things that I've noticed across firms when I've done this workshop has been where employees have said a mental health day is more important than either a bonus or a raise in that moment. The bonus is important, but it's a separate factor. And a mental health day is a separate factor and they can't be linked together. And a mental health day can be anything in terms of saying, hey, I just want to go do my laundry, or hey, I want to have an experience. And where the company comes together to discuss, or the team comes together to discuss what actually worked and how each one felt. And I think acknowledging people's needs was important. and still is important. And if we find a way to connect that, where employees feel empowered enough to ask for their needs to be met, and employers and managers feel open enough to receive what it is, even if it's unconventional. Not every need can be met, but can we create it in a way where they're being heard, understood, and creativity and innovation is being used in ways to address workforce, to not just retain them, but to create security where people are being valued for being human beings with differing needs and being able to be heard at the table, because the workforce is changing. The younger generation is asking for their needs to be met, and it's beautiful to see the amount of advocacy that goes into them asking for their needs and fighting for a work culture where many are even doing things that work for them and creating their own work culture, and saying if our bigger firms can learn to adapt and adopt these cultures with creativity, innovation, that would go a long way in creating a sustainable future that is not just hybrid, but empathetic, creative, and in some ways innovative throughout its process.